Jordan Willis.
Hello,
Welcome,
Gareth Turnbull.
welcome along Stride 365. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well, thank you. I said it feels like a first time long call, long time situation. So I'm really looking forward to this, mate. I've had a lot of enjoyment listening to your podcast and having to know you for a few years now. It's been good.
Yeah, brilliant. This is going to be quite a fun episode to record because we get to look back upon season one and some of the great guests. But as a you're a sporting parent, and as a parent of an athlete who's just gone through the pre-academy process in towards the academy, unfortunately didn't make that final step. You are a perfect guest for me that trying to help educate and enlighten certain advice from other parents, athletes and coaches who have gone through that transition yourself. So yeah, I'm really keen to understand from you as a sporting parent how maybe the podcast has helped, and how you and your family are digesting it, and what are some of your takeaways. So yeah, firstly welcome along, but how are you and Ike, no doubt, been listening or watching along?
Yeah, well, I tend to be listening to it over audio, so Spotify. So the best part about obviously podcasts is that you can log on anytime you have a moment to listen to it. So having three boys, all with sporting commitments, along with other sporting parents, we're very kind of time poor. So whilst I tend to listen to it on the way to training, on the way back from training, breaks at work, on the way to work, or normally a Sunday night in bed. To be honest, we do a little bit of time to myself to listen to the podcast in bed. So normally on a Sunday, but most commonly, I probably would listen to it by myself. It gives me a chance to kind of play back parts that I want to listen to again. It gives me a chance to write notes as well on talking points that I want to bring up as a family to the kids, and that normally kind of takes place at the dinner table, where all my boys and my wife can have an understanding and express their voice on what the topic of conversation actually is.
So is it you listening to it and then kind of regurgitating or sharing the ideas with the family, or they listen to it as well?
More so, I listen to it by myself, and then I'll come up and say, I'll come to the table and say, "This is what Gareth spoke about today, boys. How we gonna process this? How are we gonna put this into our lives? Whether it's sporting life or life in general. A lot of the guests that you speak to, it's kind of quite transitional between life and sport as well, which I find is a great takeout. And depending on which child you're speaking to, determines which approach they kind of take to it as well, which is great.
So give us a background on the stages of the three boys.
Okay, so Ike really well. So Ike is 13 years old, currently playing NPL 14s with the Essendon Royals. Then I have Tate, who is my basketball boy. So he plays representative basketball at the Melbourne Tigers at MSAC. And then we have Van, who you also know, who's part of the 2014 born program at Melbourne Victory Pre-Academy. And he also plays at Elite, which is a private academy in Melbourne, Victoria. Yeah.
Cool. So they're all at a similar sort of stage, right? Probably a little bit earlier in their journey than some of the athletes we've been speaking to. But I like the fact they're across different sports. So, are you finding the information relevant across irrespective of the code, or is the football specific people more relevant to the two boys who are playing football? Like, how's that working out?
Yeah, I tend to find that I am drawn towards the football element, only because I've been in that circle for a lot longer due to Ike. So I've kind of had to navigate towards that to learn a lot more about football in general. I grew up playing Aussie rules and doing martial arts. So I never played soccer growing up, always loved the sport. So I had to really learn about it. Basketball now is a big learning curve for me. I find myself watching a lot of NBL to try and learn different plays and how they kind of play the game and things and different characters in the game. So most guests I can actually transition into all kind of sporting codes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's certainly one of my aims is, whilst a lot of my connections are through the football industry, I'm really keen to diversify that out into other codes, because I believe there's some real transferability from code to code. And, I'm quite interested in non-sporting environments, performance environments, and what we can learn and take away from that. So, Yeah, that's. I'm glad that's sort of landing a little bit as well. What about some of the ideas or concepts that various guests have shared with you? Are there things that you're implementing and testing out in your world?
Yeah, 100%. Gareth, I tend to think a lot about my children's sporting development. So the podcast has actually lessened my thought load as it's kind of helped me navigate my thoughts to lead to not overthinking or over processing different factors or issues that are out of my control or not necessarily kind of relevant to the moment. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, why isn't Ike playing in his normal position today? Why isn't Tate in the starting five? Why is Van? He's a striker. Is Van going to kick a goal this weekend? So certain conversations has actually helped me limit the more negative thoughts, especially to the areas I can't control. I think we as sporting parents take a lot of time to place our children in the best environments for them to learn their trade, surrounded by the most experienced coaches. Although we make mistakes, we as parents are also learning. So taking the step back to kind of entrust your decision and just let the coaches do their thing and let them apply their craft, I think is important. And the podcast has helped me navigate those kind of the mindset towards that.
Yep.
Your conversation with Dean Sapali, which I'm a massive fan of, he explained the differences in his approaches between his three children and the different evolutions that he has made from his first child through to his second and then to his third child. That was kind of really resonated with me because I kind of find that my approach to being a sporting parent or being a supportive parent to a sporting child is actually ever evolving.
Yeah, I can see how that would bring pretty true to you, right, with three boys as well. For me, I think, I'm fortunate, right? I get to have these conversations with these special guests and get to ask questions that I like to answer. I've been testing some things out as well, right? So one of the, I guess, very common responses to what, part of the rapid fire questions are what are people striving for now is balance. And I think, at least half a dozen guests have said balance in their life. So to try and juggle the high performance demands of their role with their family, with their other commitments. So that's something that I keep coming back to all the time. And I was fortunate enough to speak on an A license course a couple of weeks ago. And I was asked what's the hardest part, and balance was sort of my response to that. Trying to happy wife, happy life, happy family,
yes,
football, escapism, all that sort of stuff. But one concept that really resonated with me was probably Ken Lynch and Ollie Harder both spoke about this in different language, but the idea of deletion. So what can I take away rather than add in order to get a better performance? Certainly, the guests are providing me with some stimulus to go away and think about stuff.
Which is great for you because then you can obviously bring that into your practice of your coaching and mentoring and things as well towards the generation that you're coaching.
Mm. What about your favorite guest or guests?
My favorite guests, well, it's a tough one because it's all different towards the relevance of the time, really, isn't it? So Dean was fantastic. I just found that it was quite a tangible podcast for me to listen to purely because he has obviously the three boys, the way he was ever evolving and learning through each child and a way he approaches each child. So I thought that was probably my favorite guest in the sense of tangible feeling towards a guest. Archie Thompson's always fun. He's very down to earth and his realistic manner. He's kind of welcomed in certain conversations and situations because it can be very serious at times, these kind of sporting conversations, and he kind of looks a bit, I wouldn't say laid back, but he's got a kind of comical approach to it, which I really enjoyed. One of the things he said was, I loved how he explained that, when he was playing and training overseas, he goes, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I just come back to Australia and play the game that I love there. I mean, it's fantastic to have that approach. And I think that was a really, really good conversation to listen to. But probably the most relevant at the time, at this point in time, was your Vaughan Convery podcast. Vaughan is Ike's current NPL 14s coach. And Vaughan is a bit of a mythical figure when it comes to Victorian junior soccer. So throughout the course of the years on the sidelines, you hear about this figure, this man, the myth, the legend of Vaughan Convery, and who is this person? So when it was actually time to speak to Vaughan in regards to Ike, it was quite interesting because it was probably the first time as a sporting parent that I was on the front foot with a coach or a program about what Ike and myself wanted to get out of a program and what Ike needed from a coach. And it was a bit of a challenge for me purely because of the previous mindset I had of Vaughan. So it was a great challenge for me, and thanks to certain topics on your podcast, it kind of allowed me to kind of navigate that a lot easier. And I was actually proud of myself to be able to do it. So it was good.
Oh,
It was really good.
that's nice to hear as well that there's some tangible impact occurring as well. Oh, cool.
The bonus with Vaughan is that it's actually quite a funny story. We after a parent coach and player meeting, it was an information night. Vaughan opened up the floor to the parents for any questions. I said, Vaughan, because it's a really new team. It's a new group of kids. And I said, Vaughan, how about you kind of give us a bit of a rundown of yourself, so we as parents and the players are aware of the credentials and type of player and coach that you are. He turned around and he said, "Listen, mate," he goes, "I'm a New Zealander. New Zealanders don't like to talk about themselves." He goes, "How about you Google me?" So when your podcast dropped, I was wrapped. So after listening to it, straight onto the Essendon Royals WhatsApp group, mate. So I think it's good. Everyone gets to listen to a little bit about Vaughan.
Yeah, that's certainly a Kiwi trait. I'm becoming a little bit more comfortable sitting here having these types of conversations. Trying to hold court is not easy for someone like myself. But yeah, if there's ability to tease out learning and share that wider than my inner circle, then I think it's really important. So,
And how about yourself? Who is your favourite guest been? That's the interesting point. You've spoken to so many people. So who's your favourite and why?
oh, look, I don't have children, but I would never say I have a favorite child. So I can't say I have a favorite guest. Because yeah, as I kind of mentioned, I love speaking to everybody and I can always take something out of everybody. But um, everybody asks if you go back and find one podcast, one episode, what would you do? For me, like obviously I'm a coach first and foremost, so I directly think back to coaches. An earlier one, Maya Vink. It was a shorter version. It was like around the 30-minute mark when I was just starting out. I think it was episode 3, and I might have to get Maya back on to do a longer one. But certainly Maya Vink, I really enjoyed Ollie Harder, Dave Wright, Paul Temple speaking around the academy level space. Anson Dorrance coming from UNC, who he's just retired. UNC's just gone and won national tournament this week, so he was a real special one for me as well. Athlete wise, again, Archie was fun. If you haven't seen the YouTube, go back and watch that. He's got bright pink hot pants, and he had trouble with his camera back in the early days. Was enjoyable. Marco Rojas
Yeah.
as another Kiwi, such a wholesome guy. He's an incredible human being. Sarah Rowe, three sport or multi-sport athlete. Again, just a different lens of different sports, and she really got me thinking about getting non-football people. Her background is obviously football, but it's Gaelic football and it's AFL footy as well. So that was kind of a bit of a door opener for me. The initial podcast release on Ricky Herbert, very very well known. To take your team to a senior World Cup and not lose a game, there's some big kudos there. Obviously, Vaughan was a fun one, the most recent one. Jenny Binden, another sort of triple threat. The non-football people I really enjoyed because I have to think a little bit further around how this is now transferable back into my world. So, Dr. Craig Harrison and Jack Rolfe, play specialists, youth development specialists. They're incredible listens. James Mortimer, an old friend of mine, he's the New Zealand track coach, sprinting coach. I've always thought about, could I go and coach an individual code? Is coaching, or is it, team coaching quite different to individual coaching? So I enjoyed that kind of conversation.
And what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on whether your coaching is applicable to team and also solo? What did you come up with?
It depends. It's always a safe answer, and I don't know because I would need to go and test it. I feel that creating connections to individual athletes, or even within team environment, you have individual relationships or connections with different people, right? So take football. I work with our front our front line as part of our unit. So I have a stronger connection with, namely Gilnick than I might do with a Kayla Morrison who's in a different line further back. So I think there's a lot of transferable skills, but certainly without going and trying that myself. Yeah, it's probably something I will do before I retire my coaching career, is go and test myself in an individual code athlete sport would be good. My mentor, Koresh Monsef, was a great one, talking around mentorship and coach education. And Ken Lynch, probably my mentor in this HPAD space, was another, again, non-football related conversation, was good. But I guess if you're asking me to kind of narrow the focus down to maybe one or two, I really enjoy the conversations had with the parents, the parent lens first and foremost. So Richard Bell is I think our fourth highest grossing episode. Which
he was fantastic. Richard Bell was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
For from a name, no one knows Richard Bell as compared to Archie Thompson or Ricky Herbert, but certainly that's telling me that the listeners are quite often sporting parents. So then Dean Sapolo, another high grossing one.
Yes.
Simon Gerethy in the backlog. So I'm going to make sure I get more people like yourself on in season 2 to explore the inner workings of that sporting parent dynamic. So yeah.
What I really found great about Richard Bell was he gave me some sort of reassurance that how certain ways I approach being a sporting parent towards my children was kind of on track, if that makes sense. It was a really good conversation to listen to him about that. Different things in regards to, when you're having discussions with clubs or programs, really, really pick your battles. Pick the battles that you understand, pick the battles that you kind of have a knowledge about. Don't just kind of voice opinions and make disruptions. Kind of really understand what it is you're approaching about and have a good train of thought of what are the relevant topics to be bringing up to programs and coaches. I thought he was really good with that.
Yeah. What other takeaways can you share with me?
Well, I think what I just mentioned with Richard Bell, I thought he was really fantastic. Richard also spoke about having the children or having your sporting child have a relationship with a coach. So sometimes I find with my children that they ask me questions that they really should be comfortable in asking their coaches, because their coaches are going to give them the direct, honest, right answer. Whereas sometimes I feel as a parent, they might ask you a question, you don't really kind of know the answer. So you kind of try to kind of give them an answer, and they're just better off to kind of build that rapport with their coaches. I think that was a great point that Richard came up with. Also, Dean Sapalu as well. He said a quote in regards to every player has a home, wherever that club is or wherever it is in the world, that every player has a home. And I thought that was kind of really relevant to me at the time, especially with Ike, not making it through to the academy part of Melbourne Victory. That it's just another step, mate. So finding another good home with another great program and kind of using that as motivation to then continue, to strive for your goal of what it is you want to achieve in the game, which was really good. So yeah, Dean and Richard were really good with that. Also, I kind of found that with a lot of your guests, communication is kind of the key. And I think as a sporting parent, it's sometimes hard. You might feel a little bit intimidated by programs or coaches and things that I think as a sporting parent, what you really have to know is that communication is a non-negotiable. You need to have some form of communication with your coaches or programs. I think, one of the quotes that you said that, it's time to treat parents as allies, not adversaries in regards to children's sport. So sometimes there's certain things going on in children's lives that the coach may not know. Have a chat with the parent, find out what's going on. It could be something as simple as he got a C instead of a B in his maths test, or it could be absolutely anything. It could be anything. So I think communication is a real key. And the reality is, Gareth, is that we as a family, and I specifically as a player, was very lucky to be in your program for 5 years. And the communication that yourself as a leader, Melbourne Victory as a program, and the pre-academy was fantastic. We're always updated with emails, your biannual reports on the children's progress and where they should be at, where we're hoping to get them at, was fantastic. And the way that obviously you've taught that or instilled that into your programs is great. And that's kind of followed through to John McClune, who's the Vans coach at Elite. He's up to date, communication all the time, sometimes not necessarily what I personally need to hear, but there would be a parent in the program that needs to hear what he's trying to communicate. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, good to hear. Yeah, Dave Sloss, I think I mentioned in the Vaughan episode, my first proper boss and my first kind of proper career, left a sticky note on my desk saying communication's the key.
Yeah.
Didn't have to say it to me, just left it there, and it's always stuck with me. It's something that I believe, again, communication is free for the most part. You can over communicate and you can under communicate. I always think it's safer to over communicate, and people just filter out the bits that they don't want rather than in feeling left out of the loop, right? So it's good to hear. What about as a sporting parent? What would you like to hear more about in season 2? Is it more parents? Is it more non-football or non-soccer in your case? Like what can I try and bring on for you?
Well, I think parents is a great concept. I think you could be kind of going down a dark lane sometimes when it comes to parents, to try and keep it to a positive and things. So, I mean, sometimes speaking to parents about different pitfalls maybe that they've encountered at certain programs or coaches, because we can't be kind of disillusioned to think that on the sidelines of any sporting area that it's all positive. There's a lot of kind of negative traits towards it. So how they kind of navigated that. I think maybe nutrition is a great source of information as well. My boys are really lucky. My wife, their mum, is a master cook and also has a strong passion when it comes to nutrition, whether it's for energy, recovery, or performance. I find that, and you probably be aware of this as well, you kind of go to these tournaments and kids are drinking high sugared, high sodium energy drinks. They're eating hot chips and potato cakes and hot dogs in between games. And I think that maybe if the parents kind of learnt a little bit more about nutrition and the importance of it, that it could be a good aspect to kind of to have someone on your podcast talking about those type of issues.
Yeah, and hadn't thought about that one. That's good. What about specific questions other than, say, pitfalls or how people navigate that?
Maybe if you're asking a parent, what is the reason why, as a sporting parent, you'll be willing to give up so much time for your child's sporting journey, and what's the opportunity cost of that? It's because there's a lot of opportunity cost when it comes to allowing or bringing your children into a high-class sporting environment. There's a lot of time and financial commitments and things that go along with that.
Yep, love it. Think about that one. Now we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to flip the rapid fire questions on its head. I'm going to get you, Jordan, to ask me some rapid fire questions, but we'll try and link it back to season 1. And I've made some notes here, so I'll try and reference as many guests as I can.
Okay, Gareth. So what one question as a guest asked that got you thinking and why?
Yeah, I couldn't narrow that down to one, unfortunately. I've got 3 for you. So firstly, Marco Rojas, episode 20, spoke about what's your purpose? Why do you do what you do? And for me, everything has to start with that. That's talking about your why. There's a great Japanese concept called ikigai, which looks at the intersection of 4 things I'm good at, things that can make money, things that gives me energy, and things that the world needs, which is basically fundamentally your why. So yeah, I love Marco's question there. Claudia Bunge, episode 23, she said, have you connected with your support network this week? That really got me thinking, like, apart from my wife, who else is in my support network and how often do I tap into them? And it probably got me thinking I don't do that enough. So that's sort of a strong connection with my inner circle. And then James Mortimer, episode 24, he said, are you focusing on your strengths or your weaknesses this week? And I love that one because I always talk to our young athletes about bring to life your strengths. Make sure your weaknesses aren't the determining factor of why you can't do something, but really try and hone in on your strengths. But are you bringing those to life every week? Some really good ones there to reflect upon.
Awesome. Okay, next one concept that you were thinking the most and why?
Again, I couldn't limit this to one, so I've gone with kind of 3 again. Maya Vink back in episode 2 spoke about gratitude, which is a concept by New Zealand woman rugby player Ruby Tui. So we've all heard of gratitude, and it's basically, what am I grateful for? Well, I'm grateful for this, but who's it by? Who gives me that gratefulness? So it's the action to show that person that you are grateful. So yeah, gratitude. Go listen to my event, speak about that in a bit more depth. Ken Lynch, episode 13, spoke about leaving space. And I mentioned that earlier about the concept of deletion. What can I take off my plate that allows me to give the world or my work or my sport or my relationships more of me, more of my better strengths rather than trying to add more to keep getting better. Sometimes it's the idea of creating space and taking things off, not crowding learning, he said. Um, and Dr. Craig Harrison, episode 19, Jack Rolfe 21, spoke a lot around play. Now, as you know, through pre-academy, play is the cornerstone of that philosophy. Let's keep the joy in the activities that we do, i.e., be playful, to keep that fire burning as strong as we can in whatever industry we are. I think if we lose that internal fire, things become a lot harder. So yeah, they speak a lot about play. So yeah, some three or four different concepts there, which I've certainly tried to keep at the forefront of my mind these last sort of 6 months.
Cool. Next one, magic wand. What would you wave to change?
For me, it would be this concept that athletes do not belong to anybody. I see it all the time where, clubs or TDs or programs are basically telling young athletes, that you can't go and do something. You have to do this. I'm like, hang on, unless they're a professional athlete contracted to a club or organization, they're amateur. Amateur by nature means you are free to go to environments and choose what you want that you think is the best. So yeah, trying to, well, hopefully waving a wand and allowing, TDs or clubs to kind of go, look, let's find the path for each individual athlete, which is different, to go and access or unlock different coaches, different environments, different programs, to help them on their journey. Because at the end of the day, it's their journey. It's not me as the coach, it's not you as a parent, it's the athlete's journey. So yeah, this idea of trying to, own a player, I think is just crazy. I hate it.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Advice that a guest has given you?
Again, I've gone with a few here. Go back to my Vink episode 2. Her mum gave her this advice, which I love, is test what you know because you'll find out what you don't know.
Yeah.
So that was a reference to she had a prelim exam at school and she didn't study for it. She just went and took the test because then you find out what you don't know. Therefore, you find out what you need to go and improve upon rather than stressing about this thing initially and spending all this time up front. So that was called Test What You Know because you'll find out what you don't know. Richard Bell, episode 11, he said, you can only have two of good, cheap, and quick. Can't have all three. So
yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
For me, I like that. It's like, okay, well, good and cheap. Okay, let's interesting. But yeah, I'd say be clear on what has been asked or required of you. So yeah, you can't obviously have good and quick, or you can, but it's not gonna be cheap. For example, cheap and quick, but it's certainly not going to be good. So yeah, find out what's required of you and kind of pair those two together. And I think you mentioned it before around the communication is the key. So Vaughan Coveney, episode 28, and Dean Sapolo, 25. Dean referenced the idea of 2 up, 1 down. That's come from his time in the Australian Defence Force. So have a relationship and communicate 2 layers above you, but also 1 level below you. I really like that 2 up, 1 down concept. And lastly, yeah, Anson Dorrance spoke about being a lifelong learner. He reads everything under the sun. It'll help you communicate in a better way. So for me, being a curious learner, I think Craig Harrison spoke about that. Being a lifelong learner, having conversations, listening to podcasts, reading different books, going and experiencing a sporting environment that's not your own code. All these are different ways to discover new things and then ultimately go and test them in your own environment.
Interesting. You ready for the next one?
Go for it.
Gareth, what are you striving for?
I'm always striving to help people reach their next level. That's kind of my personal why. That's either as a coach of a group of players, leading a program, creating something like this to hopefully allow information to reach more people. So yeah, I'm always trying to help people reach their next level, which whatever level that is fine. And then I guess on a personal note, it's to try and win a championship with Melbourne Victory A-League Women's, which will turn out to be my last year as an assistant coach. So if I can pick up a third championship there, that'll be pretty special.
Fantastic. Do we have a quote of the week? from Gareth that we can think about?
Yeah, I do. I'll give you one from a guest and my one. So Sarah Rowe, she said, march to the beat of your own drum, which I love, and it's something I try and live by as much as I possibly can, rather than you got to conform it sometimes, but I think not always following the crowd, and be comfortable in your own skin, and dance to the beat of your own drum. And my one is, the main thing is that the main thing remains the main thing. It's from Stephen Covey from Seven Highly Effective Habits. So, yeah, keeping sure that whatever's front of mind, it stays front of mind, or the most important thing remains the most important thing, rather than kind of constantly jumping or diluting whatever the message or the purpose is.
Fantastic. So it's been an interesting, great first season of the podcast, Gareth. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure the other listeners have as well. So you mentioned in the introduction about season 2, which we're all waiting on. You got any teasers about guests or thoughts of questions, topics that you'll be using for season 2?
Yeah, I do. I'm looking forward to, obviously, the festive season's around the corner. So whilst we're right in the heart of our current professional season, I'll taking some time to bank up some more guests. It's a good time to get people on, because a lot of people's work slows down. But yeah, in terms of athletes, there's a couple of former Socceroos and Matildas that will join us. Current Melbourne Storm athlete, a former New Zealand All Black, and an England international.
Wow.
Code. Coaching wise, we have again, football or soccer. We've got international and professional coaches. We've got some sports psych and some people from the academic world. We speak a little bit around the US college system, as well as go back to academy levels, as well as an English Premier League winner in the coaching staff. So I'm excited to
we look forward to that
one with you. Parents wise, again, we'll keep in this HPAD level space predominantly, but pretty keen to speak to two parents of a Olympic gold medalist, so that'll be fun. There's a little bit of business as well. I want to try and step outside the sporting space for a little bit, but that can tie back into our athletes and coaches and parents. So I've got a former A-League chairman, as well as somebody to speak around that US college pathway in terms of the business piece of that. And one or maybe two figures that are well known for, let's just say, some challenging situations in their life. So I'll leave people guessing on that one. But yeah, there's going to be some, certainly some interest around those two guests.
Well, looking forward to it, Gareth. Really looking forward to it.
Hey, Jordan, I appreciate you coming on and having this sort of conversation. I know it's fundamentally quite different to a normal guest, but I think it's a good chance for both of us to recap and reflect back on some of our past guests and some of the learning. So I'm really pleased to hear that a lot of that is transferring to your world directly and helping, which is awesome. So yeah, anybody else listening in that's had similar kind of feedback or wants to share in terms of future guests that they might want to recommend or questions, please reach out. Again, we've got Twitter. You can reach my own personal Twitter at GTurnbull12. We have Instagram and TikTok, as well as YouTube and Facebook under Strive365. So just go and search for those. Look for the logo predominantly and reach out. We'd love to engage with fellow guests. So you have a great summer, Christmas period.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy some time away, hopefully, and maybe go back and check out some of the back catalogue if you haven't already.
Will do, Gareth. Thank you very much for having me on the program, and thank you very much for allowing us as listeners to access your wide variety of network that we can listen to and take a lot out of, mate. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes, and parents. Cheers.